Hello friends, Nayaswami Hriman here, and it's time to ask a yogi. I had a conversation with a friend of mine, a young man, and he posed the question that was also part of my own generation in the 60s and early 70s, which goes something like this. If I want to lead a spiritual life, should I drop out? And I had an email from somebody I don't know. I field a number of questions all the time, and rarely do I know the people asking. And a young man asked the same or similar question. He said, in this case, he said, I have natural desires for a life partner, maybe a family, a career. He wanted to finish his education. And so I contrast both of these young men and myself as a young man and Swami Kriyananda as a young man back in the mid-40s, and then my guru Paramahansa Yogananda in the first decade of the 20th century. All of us have asked the same question. Should I go to college? Should I, assuming I want to lead a spiritual life, is it okay for me to want to be married, want to have a partner, a relationship, and so on? Well, these are certainly questions of the time. In former times, the answer would be very clear. No, you need to go to a monastery or somehow leave the world and embrace your spiritual path in the form of outer as well as inner renunciation of ordinary family life and so forth. I remarked to the one young man who emailed that in the Hindu system, the 4 stages of life acknowledge the value, the importance, the necessity, let's face it, of having a normal householder life at some point in one's spiritual path. And so it is that Ramana Maharshi, when he was asked the same question in the 20th century, he generally dissuaded people from taking vows of sannyas and renunciation. A great number of, even Ramakrishna, although to a little lesser degree, he was more in the 19th century. But what I'm saying is that in this century, in this age, I should say, 20th century and beyond, the general spirit moving souls who are being born is to bring spirit to work. That's a little expression I like to use, which is not to reject the world and its evil, its temptations and so forth, but rather to embrace the world and find the middle path, such as Buddha taught, such as Krishna taught. In fact, Jesus was much more of a renunciate. He said, care not for for what you wear or whether you have any money. And he was more like a Hindu sadhu. And St. Francis too, who followed him. But in this age, it's really more finding that middle path. Now, having said that, I have also, by contrast, the example of Yogananda, of Swami Kriyananda, and to a much lesser degree, even myself, and the young man I was talking to. There are some for whom pursuing college or pursuing career is not actually the way to go spiritually. I see among other young people I have known that, as in my day, 60s and 70s, there are those who, not necessarily because they're lazy, I'm not referring to people who are lazy, but who want to live a different lifestyle, a more free lifestyle, who want to be perhaps creative as well as pursuing the spiritual path, who don't want to get hooked into, paychecks and mortgages and squalling children and all that sort of thing. what we do isn't so important as how we do it, why we do it, the consciousness with which we do it. If we have a career in squalling children, and yet we can be a devotee. We can offer our life to God, seeing God in our life partner, seeing God in our children and our co-workers. All of these things are possible. But there is also true. I mean, Ananda itself and its network of worldwide communities would not exist if it weren't for people like Swami Kriyananda and some of the founding members of Ananda, and I include myself somewhat in that, who didn't drop out, as we used to say, who I certainly left a promising career and I had a business which I sold, and to commit myself to the path. So there is room for that. But yet I married and had children. So it's not black and white, but it is a good question. And it's very individual. And there are those who would do well to follow their heart. When I went away to the seminary, when I was still in the latter stages of grammar school, that was a mixed bag. There was truly a spiritual impulse, I think, from a past life, but there was also the fear that I would get involved in material life. It was the late 60s, and a lot of revolutionary and somewhat self-indulgent things were beginning to happen, the sexual revolution and drugs and all that. So for me, it wasn't my path ultimately, but it had twin aspects to it. So those who are more seriously considering dropping out, please be sure that you're not doing it because you're lazy or you're fearful. There's nothing wrong with getting a college education, establishing yourself, your ability to function in the world and get some life experience and career and so forth. And then if you feel, as I did, after a few years after college working in my profession, to go to a community or what have you, that's fine. So there's no pat answer to this question, but it is a valuable question. And talking to someone who you consider can be helpful to you, impartial, but also knows you to some degree, I think can be very helpful. Okay, the path to God is as unique as each and every one of us, and only we can walk it.